Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks. In this channel, we are going to discuss about public cloud design problem statement and their related solution. Today, we are going to discuss about Azure Dedicated HSM versus Key Vault Managed HSM. So, as our problem statement for the day is the differentiation between Azure Cloud Dedicated HSM versus Key Vault Managed HSM. So the solution is totally depends on your need. Based on your NFRs, based on your requirement, you can decide which ones to choose. So let's try to understand what is Azure Dedicated HSM. An Azure Dedicated HSM is a cloud-based service that provides HSMs hosted in Azure data center that are directly connected to a customer or virtual network. So when we are telling that is connected to the customer's virtual network, that means the full access to the Azure Dedicated HSM will be in your control, and you can access your dedicated HSM via the private IP of that particular network so that no one else can get the access. And Microsoft even doesn't have any access to the cryptographic functionality of the HSM. So that is the power of dedicated HSM, and customer has complete access to your particular dedicated HSM for the cryptographic operations. When we say cryptographic operations, that means encryption, decryptions, and validation, certificate validations, key validations. Now, how does it work? So when you are provisioning an HSM, you are provisioning in a specific region via PowerShell script or command line interface. So only via these two methods you can deploy your Azure Dedicated HSM. And you have to deploy a specific virtual network where you have to deploy your Azure Dedicated HSM. HSM will be available in the designated region via the private IP. So only via the private IP you will be able to connect to the dedicated HSM, and the connectivity pattern is SSH mode. And when you want to connect the dedicated HSM from your application, you can use the HSM client tools or SDKs or software which has been provided by Thales provider. You can also synchronize your on-premise dedicated HSM with Azure Dedicated HSM via the point-to-point VPN connectivity or point-to-site VPN connectivity. You also can import your keys to an existing on-premise HSM to dedicated HSM. That is also possible. So let's try to understand Azure Dedicated HSM fit for and not fit for. So if you have a requirement where you want to go ahead with lift and shift mechanism, you have a on-premise HSM device that you want to migrate to Azure environment, then dedicated HSM is your way to go. You have to do less work there. Or you have a scenario where you have an Amazon Web Services EC2 virtual machine which is using AWS Cloud HSM, then dedicated HSM is fully compliant with that. So with that, you have to do less work rather than it is more compliant to migrate that activities. Now running shrink wrapped software. So let's try to understand what is shrink wrapped software. A shrink wrapped software means a software that has not been customized and that is generally commercially available to the user. They can use it without any customization. Straightforward software, third-party softwares, in that way you can understand. So currently dedicated HSM like manager of keyless TLS, Active Directory Certificate Services, or SQL like you have a IS virtual machine where you have deployed your SQL server and you want to achieve your TD, transparent database encryption, that can be achieved by Azure Dedicated HSM. But it is not fair for the PaaS services, like if you have a Azure SQL database, PaaS database, Azure storage, Azure data lake store, or disk encryption, that type of encryption you want to do by the dedicated HSM, then that is cannot be done via the dedicated HSM. There you have to use the latest feature which has been published recently, Azure Key Vault Managed HSM. Now let's try to understand when to use dedicated HSM and its deployment architecture. So when you have a requirement like security requirement like FIPS 142 level 3 certification is your security minimum requirement that you want to achieve, then that can be only achievable with two services which has been provided by Azure. One is Azure Dedicated HSM, another is Key Vault Managed HSM. This is the new feature. And when you have a requirement to access your HSM explicitly, even the device also you want to keep it in your control, then dedicated HSM is your way to go, and should have a complete control over the device. In that case, you need it. When you are designing the Azure Dedicated HSM, make sure cross-region deployment is recommended for a disaster resilient solution. As it is a kind of IaaS solution, you have to make sure you have deployed it with multiple regions. Also, the regions has HSM racks, like each region has different HSM racks deployed in either in 2 independent data center or at least 2 independent availability zone. That's how this has been designed. So also, if you are trying in-region latency, like within a region you want to reach to Azure Dedicated HSM from your application, then the latency is single-digit millisecond, whereas the cross-region latency is 5 to 10 times than the single-digit milliseconds which is currently happening. So while designing the solution, make sure you are having the right NFRs for this service. And also must use 2 HSM devices in a region, for the disaster recovery. Now let's try to understand the difference between dedicated HSM and key vault managed HSM. As we understood, dedicated HSM is more like a IaaS solution, key vault managed HSM more like PaaS solution. And you know the difference between IaaS and PaaS. You have more operational activities with IaaS, whereas PaaS has less operational activities. Here in dedicated HSM, customer owns the network, but in key vault managed HSM, Azure manages the security. You do not have to take care of all this, all the aspect of PaaS solution will be provided by key vault managed HSM. Whereas in IaaS, you have to take care of your disaster recovery, your high availability, your backup, everything has to be designed by you. Then access can be established to Azure Dedicated HSM via the private IP. But with key vault managed HSM, as it is a PaaS service which holds or which runs over the key vault product, you have to, if you want to connect it securely, then you have to connect it via the private link, and which is currently in preview state. So if you want to know the latest status, then keep following the Azure update page, where you will get the update when the private link of managed HSM will be in the globally available status. And currently it is Azure Dedicated HSM, as we understood, it is not encrypted with the services which has been currently provided by PaaS service like Azure Storage or Azure Data Lake. So if you want to achieve the encryption or data encryption there with Dedicated HSM, then it will not support that. Whereas key vault managed HSM supports that, the PaaS service encryption, data encryption, and both of this service supports security standard FIPS 142 level 3 type of certifications. The cost for dedicated HSM is $4.85 per hour. So you have to pay per cluster or per hour that you are currently using. I have gathered all this information by following this link. If you like the video, then don't forget to subscribe the channel and like the video and comment your thoughts about this solution. And thanks a lot for listening. Have a nice day.